It's 5:30. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll consider the minutes of the regular meeting September 15th, 2020, and special meeting September 25th, and special meeting September 30th, 2020.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the regular minutes from September 25th, 2020, and the special meeting September 25th, 2020, and the special meeting from September 30th, 2020.
I'll second
Okay.
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Darris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
Aye. Okay, do we have anything for the public forum? Okay. Are there any additional agenda items?
I'd like to add agenda item number 20A for the discussion and action as needed regarding hospital financials and ownership.
Any other additions or corrections? Is there an approval of the,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that in the 28.
I'll second it.
any discussion? Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Darris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
City update on COVID-19. I haven't personally seen any revised information put out by the county or the state. I think we're just still status quo, wear your mask, social distance, and be safe. Okay, item number 8, North Central Regional Planning Commission, new fire department building update. I don't believe that we have a representative here
She was supposed to be, she mentioned it in her mail, she was supposed to be.
that she's supposed to be here. It might be that we want to table this until later into the meeting then. I would move that we would table item number 8, North Central Regional Planning Commission, new fire department building update until, I don't know if we can pick a real time or not, knowing, yeah, we're not knowing when she'll be here, they'll be here. Okay, we'll move it to, let's see,
We'll just move it to when she.
till she arrives. Does anyone have any objection to not designating a specific line item? No objections? All right. Item number 9, David Cayley, meter can explanation and action as necessary.
I brought some samples in. I didn't know how to explain this. Some of the issues we've been having with the new meters, because they have a thermal coupler in them that senses heat. This is some of the things that they're trying to protect. Meters getting hot, whatever is. Meters getting hot and everything is melting on the back of the meters, which this one actually caused a little electrical fire.
Is it the meters or the meter can?
Well, the meter is what takes the punishment. It could be either loose wire inside the meter can or something. And like this meter can is like the 40s.
Obsolete.
It's a 60 amp meter can that's not even, there's still a bunch of these in the town. Only rated for 60 amps. National Code, Electrical Code recommends at least 100 amp minimum for residential. And then if you look, it's hard to see, I can end it up, like these tabs, they get bent open, and that's what's causing these meters to get hot. This is the can we've been having a lot of trouble with. For some reason, this style can right here, it's an old 50s, 60s can that we put the new meters in, and they're just, the meter, the thermal coupler and meter up senses that 140 degrees, and they open up. So then the residents have been having to redo this, you know. We provide the meter can free in the hub and all that. They have to get electricians come out and put a new one in. Part of this also could be from over the years, shut-offs and non-pay. We go out, we have to pull the meter, put the sleeves on, put the meter back in, you don't quite get it lined up. When you shove it in, you bend them a little bit. Or, you know, just some places we do that quite regularly. Where the new meters, that's why we're buying them. They have a remote disconnect built into them. We can go out there, tell it to open up, and the electrician's off. We have to get into this meter can and disturb it.
So any like turn-offs, remodel stuff, you always upgrade to the new.
Yeah,
The policy is we upgrade to the newer.
I recommend it. I can't force people to do it. To the newer style, it has more newer upgraded type. I just picked this out of an old user can. Like
Brad, didn't we like change like ownership? We had them to upgrade it. Wasn't that a?
we could,
Maybe we did change that over.
we come to we stop at the where the triplex meets their weather. And then therein it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain the.
Well, this has been several years ago, but I thought we talked about you have to upgrade to the newer, get rid of the 40s and go up to the newest meter can to solve that problem on any change of ownership.
Okay, if it's out there, then I don't know about it, or haven't seen it in.
And maybe it's not like everything else
Didn't get to fruition, so,
And that's something like, realtors and stuff need to know that, so when they're selling houses. You know, it has happened where somebody's bought a house, they come out to hook it up, can't have it hooked up because it's not safe. Then they get stuck, it becomes a battle between the new owners and the previous owners of the place. But Deb was wanting to know what we see, and this is what we see. And like this one, you can see where it's gotten hot. The tabs have gotten hot, but it hasn't melted yet. That's why I just brought them up here to show you.
I appreciate that. And you always provide great learning moments for me. I do appreciate that, your patience.
I
and that.
try.
Yep, you do a good job. I can look into the history of where we were when that, I'm assuming it was an ordinance change or something, whenever that was. I'll
17, 14, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
okay, I can look into that and then see,
Somewhere
if
around
it-
2013.
pardon?
Somewhere around 2013.
Okay.
I think.
I can do that, but we can see where we want it to be,
Right.
where we should be, and where we will be in the very near future in this regard, so.
David, if it overheats, kicks that thermal, is that meter bad then?
Yeah, it runs it. I mean,
And,
this old mechanical one,
no, the newer meter.
yeah, it burns up the circuit boards inside them.
So you're out.
Yeah.
100 and whatever they are.
Yeah, plus the citizen is out of service and then we may
Service,
be
yeah.
called out.
If
After
it melts
hours.
anything down inside the can, then they're out until they get an electrician out there and that's why we're trying to fix these as we come across them. You know, some people, well, you're gonna have to have this fixed and they get upset. You know, and I understand it, it's not,
It's expensive.
it's
It's
expensive,
definitely not cheap, I can tell
but
you
it's a
that.
fire hazard. I mean,
Yeah.
really, it's an electrical fire hazard. And if we're aware of it, we really need to say you have to have this done.
And we need something behind us that says that we have the authority to compel them to do it.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind giving me, I can probably get my research completed before Monday when you have the department head meetings. We can discuss what it was, what it should be, and then bring it back to this body for any further action to move forward on that, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I got it. All right, is the city responsible for, so what point are we responsible? From that point, full to the line, or
Where our triplex comes to the house, that's where we stop.
has that been monkey, like,
The house not-
Top, where the wires come out.
Where the triplex comes to, that's what West Plant mounts their house.
so in
not
theory,
theirs.
that's the,
Then we install our meter into the electric box.
okay,
But we give them the meter can.
Yeah.
So it fits our meter, so we furnish that for them, and they put the weatherhead on it and stuff on top, the
Okay.
electrician does.
okay.
Any other questions for David? Thank you again. I appreciate your time, David. Oh, okay. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Are you from North Central Regional County? Okay.
Yes, we are. I'm sorry that we were late.
Oh, you're fine, you're fine. We've just kind of tabled, moved you down a notch, but we'll be glad to, let you take the floor. Do we want to,
I got it.
I don't know, you're welcome to stay where you are and use the microphone, or you're welcome to, you can stand up, yeah, yeah. And, but we'll have you use the microphone and, it's whatever you feel comfortable with speaking in this group with your mask
Okay.
on or not, so
Okay, I might take it off this week.
whatever you feel comfortable with.
I'm Emily Benedict. I'm the executive director at North Central, and this is Bree Beck. She's newer to the community development role, so I'm here mostly because she's still training. So this is her first public hearing. But we are here for the fire station community development block grant public hearing, and there is some paperwork that's required for the application. But first and foremost, since we haven't actually been here to talk about this, I'd like to open it up, see if you guys have any questions in general or anything at all that you want to talk about before we hop right into that.
I would just like to share that where we as a commission began with this was in January. We voted to approve moving forward with the grant application process. This body has not seen the plan, the dollar amount, or anything since that point, or even had any approval of moving forward. We have had a change in staff, I believe, and you were working with our previous interim fire chief, and he did a great job in going through the grant application process. So as a body, we need to be brought up to speed on where we are today, what are our options, and things like that.
Absolutely. So today is, if you, I guess this is jumping way ahead, but if you want to apply for grant funding for 2021, it's awarded in January. That decision will have to be made tonight. We have to have a public hearing and sign paperwork tonight. If that's not possible, there's no reason that it couldn't be tabled and you can apply next year and just utilize what's been done thus far and carry it over to next fall to apply. But for purposes of applying for fiscal year 2021, that decision will have to be made tonight. So I apologize. So you guys haven't seen anything. That was my fault for making the assumption that communication was happening.
It's fine.
And I shouldn't make that assumption because it happens more often than it probably should. But
Oh, okay, well, sorry.
So basically, we should have brought a copy now that I know you haven't seen it, but we have received a preliminary architectural report from Chad with Faulkner. Is that right? So he has developed a cost estimate, and we do have a copy of that we can pass around.
And it also has, just a brief description of the number of days and everything that they're gonna add. And I printed off the layout as well, and kind of how they're gonna wanna put it on the property.
Okay, should we make copies of that? Because we could make copies pretty
Well,
quick.
I really, since we don't know anything about it, we're probably gonna have to table it, because we haven't got land, or we don't even have where we're going with it, or
Yeah,
what we want, or
yeah.
we really haven't seen it.
For sure, yeah, what we were working with was that it was being built on the football. I was thinking.
Chip
that.
field.
Fairfield,
Yeah, the field. Yeah, next to the law enforcement center. And that was, as far as the location goes, that's what it was, but the total cost was just over 2 million. And this grant funding is for
50.
600,000 of that. So it's not actually 50/50.
So if we choose to table it tonight, and we still have until January 1st, right, to get in on or 12/31,
So the application's actually due October 30th.
October
The
30th.
awards are made in January.
Gotcha,
So basically it'd just be tabled until
next year.
same time next year. Yeah.
I think that,
I think we're gonna have to do that, we have to get the city manager.
I apologize that you, that we're all, in the dark on this. We do have a city manager now that, will make sure that it goes in the proper sequence and things like that. However, I believe, did you, Leo, or someone receive a copy of the packet that they had sent?
Yes, I got it this morning. I looked over a little bit. I didn't know that the general consensus stuff, the commission didn't have them look at that.
Yeah.
And I can't give my professional expertise,
Yeah.
with less than a day left. We won't sign off on it. So I think that we table this to make sure it'd be great.
Yeah.
We could basically use the same information, so we wouldn't have to completely reinvent the wheel. Is
Absolutely.
that right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, there isn't any added expense or anything like that, just you already have a report done, so you're ahead of it, and if you have to end up looking for any other financing or anything like that, it just gives you that much more time to figure all of that out too.
Perfect.
And to look at the plan and make adjustments and
Mhm.
all
Very
that, so.
And so I'm assuming that you have contact information for them, and we can roll with that as we go through the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so very much for your time, and I
Yeah, no problem.
apologize again that it ended this way, but at least we're all on the same page today,
Yes, absolutely.
and
No, that's not a problem at all.
we appreciate it. Thank you so
I
very
did
much.
have one more question.
Yes.
In regards to the cost that you sent, the cost layout,
Uh-huh.
would there be a chance if we waited till next year, would you want to move forward with this? With COVID-19 kind of construction costs have been going up, do you foresee any increase in pricing or?
Honestly, I'm not really sure. I do know that projects recently that have been up for bid have been way over because of material availability and all of that, so, I guess the hope is that because it wouldn't be until probably realistically it wouldn't be going up for bid until fall of probably 2022 if you applied next year. So hopefully by then, you hope that it would go back to normal, start to go back to normal.
So, do we have to follow that design, or can we do?
No, you guys, that would be just a matter of working with Chad, with the design, figuring out final details, and obviously, like, if the cost, if it needs to be lower, then making adjustments that way and everything. I can make sure that he sends that over to city manager. That way you guys have all of that information too, and we actually have copies of it too, you can send it over also,
That would be,
along with his contact information.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll just
sure.
establish a new relationship and move forward and make progress that direction.
That works.
All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your
Thank you.
time. Okay, item number 10. Oh, I know I'm going to say your name right. Thank you. David Shia, a statement from Case Pharmacy. You can go, yeah. And there's a,
Whatever you want. My name is David Shea and I own Case Pharmacy. In the spirit of time, you guys got a big agenda. We're going to condense this down a little bit. Last week I said something at the joint meeting. I want to give you guys a quick update of where we're at. A couple weeks ago, we heard rumors the hospital planned to open a retail pharmacy. Called multiple board members, was told. I even talked to Isabel. Isabel claimed that it was proprietary information. At that point, I called the construction company whose trucks I saw in front of the hospital. They said, well, we're building a pharmacy. Called the city manager. He at that time said he had no knowledge of it. I attended the hospital board meeting on September 22nd. There's no mention of pharmacy being built. Since no one would talk to me at that point in time, I went out and hired a lawyer to get a Kansas Open Records Act request, the city and the hospital both, 2 weeks ago. I have received documents from the hospital that show that the hospital has an intention of withholding the hospital's current construction of a retail pharmacy from me and other members of the public. The hospital has also produced a meeting minutes showing that the hospital board has not discussed the idea for or construction of a pharmacy during the public portion of any of its board meetings so far this year. Because nothing about a pharmacy is included in their agenda or their minutes, we believe that we have a violation of Kansas Open Meetings Act. This last week, Isabel reached out to me via email stating FYI, the reason for our retail pharmacy is to be able to provide a prescription benefit to our employees. As you know, you cannot do it without a retail pharmacy and a pharmacist to run it, as it is not intended to run you out of business. I actually appreciate her reaching out, so we have some contact from the hospital. And I just want to mention that the hospital is in fact, that's basically completely false. The hospital currently, under the hospital pharmacy license, can dispense medications for not only their patients, but for any of the hospital employees and their families. Simply stated, if the goal is to get prescriptions just to those people, getting a retail pharmacy is not needed. Additionally, from a financial standpoint, it's cheaper for the hospital to fill prescriptions for its employees and families by using the hospital's inventory that can be bought through the hospital's group purchasing organization. The Congressional Budget Office, CBO, found that hospitals pay on average 9% less than retail pharmacies for inventory. Covered entities, which the hospital would be, can also do 340B drugs to their employees. So that's not an issue also. This is exactly what Memorial Hospital in Abilene does. They have an inpatient pharmacy for all the employees' families that they dispense out of. It's not an issue. If the hospital opens a retail pharmacy, it's required to keep separate inventory from the hospital pharmacy, have a separate retail pharmacy license, and purchase that inventory at more expensive retail rates. So the long and short is the hospital's goal is to obtain prescriptions for its employees and its families as inexpensively as possible. Opening a retail pharmacy is unnecessary and probably a poor economic model to do so. To be clear, I have no objection for the hospital doing that if that's what they want to do. What I do strongly oppose is the hospital opening a retail pharmacy when all discussions about it have been hidden in executive session under the guise of strategic planning. If this occurred, I believe they have violated the Kansas Open Meetings Act. And honestly, what bothers me the most about the whole situation is the fact that no hospital administrator or member of the hospital board has reached out to the pharmacy or myself through this whole process until now. I have been told that one of the reasons the hospital is opening a retail pharmacy is because my pharmacy demanded a rate increase on the 340B program earlier this summer. That is simply not true. It is inconsistent with the alleged reason the hospital is opening the retail pharmacy via email last week. Hospital, as far as the alleged rate increase, the hospital offered and we agreed to contracted rates with the hospital on the upcoming 340B program in 2019. This is documented in emails, which I'm more than glad to provide to anyone that wants it. Shortly thereafter, I was provided a contract and that I was told incorporated these rates. I did not have it reviewed by my attorney, which is my mistake. I'm learning things still. And I signed it and sent it back. In June, during implementation, I received an email from SunRx identifying the terms which were different from the rates agreed upon in the previous emails. I reached out to SunRx and they advised me that the rates matched what was in the contract I signed. I sent SunRx an email me agreeing to the original rates offered, and I said, how do I get these rates? He said, well, you have to terminate your current contract, and then they will get me a new contract with the correct rates, which we did. So we were not increasing our rates, we were actually trying to get the original rates that were offered to us. And we didn't really hear anything about this. We didn't know this was an issue till about 2 weeks ago when we started hearing that the hospital board said that we were holding the hospital hostage on these 340B rates. What I do not know, what the hospital administration has been telling the board in executive session about my pharmacy. We're holding them hostage on 340B rates, or they need a retail pharmacy to fill prescriptions to their employee. The point of all this is all this thing should be done in open meetings. If this was done in open meetings, I'd be able to defend myself with the pharmacy. People would be able to have comments. I filed an Open Meetings Act complaint with Kansas Attorney General's office last week. The Attorney General's office has assigned the investigation to the Dickinson County Attorney. She currently has COVID, so nothing's going to happen till a minimum of October 12th, and more than likely they won't have the investigation finished till the second week in November. Please understand that I'm not taking these steps just to get out of here or have any get up here and talk or have any enjoyment of doing this. Regardless of how this ends up, I still got to pay my attorney, and that's not coming back to me. I'm doing this because I feel that I have no other options based on how the hospital is behaving. If this is mine, I'm asking the city commission to use any power it may have to stop the construction of the pharmacy or the opening of the retail pharmacy until we have something back from the Dickinson County Attorney as to what happened actually. If they say that they violated the Open Meetings Act, I then ask that whatever we do, it should be open to the public comment and public discourse. If it's the will of the public that we have a retail pharmacy up there and the will of the board, when it's public, there's nothing I can do about that. But having it behind closed doors and having it where no one knows what's going on is not the way it's supposed to work. I ask this process to be followed because I believe the public has the right to weigh on whether they want the tax dollars to be spent and what way it is spent. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
On the 340B, is that what you call it?
Correct.
So didn't the 340B, if I understood, when we set it up years ago, it actually paid money to the hospital?
Correct, it did. So the 340B contract that was implemented originally under Ryan was the hospital administrator at that time. That contract ran until fall of 2018, I believe. And at that point, the hospital did not get renewed on the HRSA website to participate in the 340B program. There was an employee that was on her way out at the time, from what I understand, and just paperwork didn't get done. So they did not get renewed on the HRSA website. 340B program was stopped until they could get up on the site again. The hospital decided to renegotiate the contract in the summer of 2019. And that's when we got an email. They employed SunRx to do the negotiating on their part. We got an email from SunRx saying these are the offered rates that we agreed to at that point in time.
So I don't have the exact numbers, but I know it was bringing in 200 to 250 a year.
Correct.
To the hospital from the. So that's just wondering why they, bringing money into it anyway.
So, Brad, would you mind addressing the issue, please, on what the city's authority or control over hospital operations?
The really short answer, in terms of day-to-day operational types of activities and decisions that they make, we have none. I've got about a 5-page set of notes after the public meeting, going through all the elements of that. When I was asked, I jokingly said, no, I can't answer that. I can, but it's like an hour-long presentation because the hospital, for example, over the years, the city divested itself of certain property, real property rights that are in the name of the hospital. How that's owned is a little difficult because of what I would even call the hospital in terms of its own operating entity. But it does have statutory authority for them to have a board of trustees, which we originally appointed and controlled in terms of numbers. But then that board ultimately is an elected board now, so the public speaks as to that. We don't directly. The hospital does come to you and makes a presentation, because we're still inextricably tied with each other in terms of budgets to some extent, but yet they have their own. So it goes back and forth on some elements. But the one thing that I can tell you based upon both history and what we have in the way of statutory support is the hospital on its day-to-day operational decisions. Whatever those may be in terms of, well, do we get a new copier this year or not? Do we go ahead and increase the footprint? Do we add rooms? Do we add services? Do we have a pharmacy? Is basically up to that board of trustees. It is not a city decision or one that we have the right, as best I can tell, to veto.
Thank you.
But when it comes down to getting finance for them, like they have to come to us.
Yeah, because we still have where it becomes very difficult is that okay, Harrington Municipal Hospital, in certain instances, that creates liabilities for us. At what level? It's a case-by-case determination. Financing, going ahead and borrowing money in certain ways, all run through here. So that's why we have such a complex relationship. It gets to be kind of schizophrenic, because in some ways, the hospital has every right to deal with the operations of the facility in terms of their board. In others, they ultimately work with and through, in a lot of cases, the city to do a lot of that types of financing, because it's the only way it's going to occur.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, but the bond paperwork from the 40s and the 70s, it also included in that paperwork that all the revenue from the hospitals goes to maintain their own building.
Yes, basically that's correct.
So none of that would be on the cost of the city itself or anything.
No. And when we get into situations like, okay, if we're part of the city, we need a new roof on the hospital. Well, that's when we went and did that research and found, actually, no, the hospital owns that facility. There was a reason for doing that. There were certain types of federal funding sources available for medical providers. 70s, I have to look back at all of that. But you had to be the owner of the structure that you were improving and that you're doing. So, and I'm pretty sure there's no absolute set of notes, but there's a fairly good stream of paperwork that indicates it's very logical that the city said, well, we'll make you the owner so you can qualify to do certain things. And so there's the physical structure, the physical plant. When you go to the Register of Deeds, it is held in the name of the hospital, so the name of the city.
Correct me if I'm wrong, 'cause I just looked at this the other day on that same topic. It is held in Harrington Municipal Hospital. If you go further down, it says ownership is city.
Yeah, it's and that's what I mean. It gets complex in terms of what do we call it? And we went through this 2 years ago ad nauseum and came up with, okay, we could kind of go on one side of this in certain areas and on the other in certain that they're marginally clear. But there's a huge gray area in between as to this whole thing. I can say that the city still has involvement with that hospital in a number of ways, and liability in and through on a number of things for it. But in terms of the board of trustees, their bylaws and how they're set up, and they're independently elected at this point, they are charged with the duty of day-to-day operational decisions, and that really includes things like physical plan extensions and services offered.
I don't know if this is the time or place, but about, can we get, do ways that we're not tied to it ever?
Yes, there's several different ways to do that. And again, this assumes you want to maintain a not-for-profit status, and that is to follow what is now used in 99% of the hospitals in this state, which is a district form of hospital. And I know those efforts have been made through the board of trustees and that sort of thing several times to try to get, because townships, for example, that are served by, can be served by can be made a part of that hospital district, but generally they don't fall into two hospital districts. So Abilene, these different hospitals have some of the townships that actually still send people to this facility. But you're not really gonna, so we bump into Marion, we bump into Abilene, Junction City, Manhattan. But there were still a number that were not currently taxed for a hospital district.
13.
Yeah, and they were approached, but I don't think we ever got enough names on a petition to put this thing to a vote. We did do, and I know that Eric had a copy of it the other night, and I looked it up, I've still got it. I drew the ordinance at the request of the city commission at the time, that if the district were formed, that we would immediately transfer anything and everything that we still have by way of vested interest in hospital assets in any way, shape, or form. And that was passed at that time, this is what we were willing to do for you. But since it's never come to fruition, that just stopped where it was.
I was under the impression that once the previous commission passed that they had 15 days to file a petition with the county, and I think that's what ended up having.
Right.
So as it relates to the question that you posed to us today, David, do you have any questions of the city attorney or this body based on the information that you've heard here?
So, Brad, I have a question. Yeah. So let's say K's sues the hospital. Are we liable?
Depends on the basis of the lawsuit. So the standard legal answer is yes, no, and maybe.
Okay.
But I'm
So
not being facetious. I mean, it
then,
depends on what it is.
yes, no, or maybe we need to be more involved with the hospital's decisions.
And that's a policy decision for you, but yes, I understand. Because we are still tied, we've run into this over and over and over again.
You never know where you're at.
Yeah, it's, it'd be nice, and I'm sure from the hospital's perspective, to know that they're completely autonomous if they choose to be. But to do that, there's only a limited number of vehicles out there to create a freestanding facility. And I know that those have been explored repeatedly, but just have never gotten to the finish line with that, because it wasn't sufficient in one instance, public sport, to go ahead and change it over to a district. So we're still sitting where we were years ago.
How can the hospital change the private hospital and be their own business entity?
If a for-profit entity that gets into an area outside of my expertise, but it is doable. But it normally isn't terribly sustainable in today's environment. And again, I'm really speaking out of turn on that.
I know we're getting off track with David.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And so I would like to go back to my question to you,
I
David.
just didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, I understand. We could go on forever, and I think we will research other
It
areas.
sounds like, to a certain extent, there's nothing you can do today. With that said, we are going to continue with our freedom of information and the core request. And we will be revisiting you guys if we find that the hospital did violate them.
We appreciate that. I do appreciate all the time and energy that you've taken to share all of the details with the city commission. And we'll continue to pursue, whatever action needs to be taken that we can. Did you have something else that you would like to share?
One quick question for Brad, and it's probably gonna be a yes, no, and maybe answer. Regarding his specific request to the commission in his statement, can we postpone any activity that is going on there until the investigation is done?
At the hospital for purposes of their expansion or whatever
Correct.
you want to call it, no. Not that I'm aware of.
That's one of the answers we need. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you very much, David. We appreciate your time. All right, item number 11, discuss and consider standard traffic ordinance for Kansas City's edition of 2020. And this is an annual event that we just go through and upgrade it to be compliant.
It's a housekeeping detail.
Yeah.
It's an annual revision that the league puts out, and we adopt them so we remain current. Their intent is to stay current with the legislature's statutory changes in those areas. and we follow suit by using that as our template.
So I would move, oops, I'm sorry. I would move to approve the standard traffic ordinance for Kansas City's edition of 2020.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Brad, in previous years, we've changed or deleted or modified some of those sections. Are we doing that in this one?
No, I looked at them when they first came out. There's nothing this year that's a material change. The only thing that we do now, or I normally look to do and take note of, is at one point we always had to maintain everything, whether it was international building codes or these 3 copies or 3 sets here at the city. That has been altered statutorily so that generally the appropriate number, and it's usually 1 extra set, so we don't have that expenditure. But other than that, that's what was presented is exactly what we do each year. We just change it to list the current year's copies as they're produced. And there were no other huge material changes this year that we've had in the past.
Any other discussion, questions? Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
Aye. Item number 12 will be a similar process. Discuss and consider uniform public offense code for Kansas City's edition of 2020.
Brad, same question. Nothing in there with you.
No.
Okay.
I would move to approve the uniform public offense code for Kansas City's edition of 2020.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
Aye. Item number 13, discussion of reconnection of utilities. Staff proposal and action is needed.
So at the end of last meeting, I was tasked along with some of my team to look at ways we can revise the disconnection reconnection policy. So in your packets are some items that myself, Marcus, and Julie worked on. The first one is being a communication piece, which is going to be a letter from the city manager, if approved, to where twice a year, right before it gets cold, or right before it gets warm, just a letter of re-education. Please let us know if you need anything. We also attached some phone numbers for utility assistance providers in the area at the bottom, signed by myself, and it's just a formality that we can hopefully mail out with each bill in those corresponding months. Notated on that is also something to where if the proposal of eliminating the current bill, not the past bill. So for instance, in your packet, you see 2 different bills. One of your bills is our current process, which is that they were coming on October 2nd to pay the bill, and they've already been cut off. They're having to pay September's bill and a bill from October that they still have not yet received. There's a good chance, I know Julie sent out the bills earlier this week, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So they may not have them yet. So we're pretty much asking a customer who hasn't yet seen their bill that has come in the mail to pay said bill without ever looking at it. So we propose that with the proposed policy, that if they were to come in and they've been disconnected, that they're going to pay September's bill, not October, but they are still held liable for the October bill to be due upon receipt, which we have our internal processes for that. Also, stated in a communication letter is if they give us a call, we can extend their due date 10 days and do that once a quarter. So they're not taking advantage of it. It seems like some of the people who are calling in and trying to prevent disconnection, there seems to be habitual customers and residents. So we just kind of want to have something laid out, more formal, stating, okay, this is what we want to move for. The communication piece to it. So we're doing everything we can as a provider of electricity to prevent disconnection, but we're also leaving that to the customer and the resident. Now, there was mention last time in the last meeting about waiving. Commissioner Bell had mentioned about not waiving the reconnection fee, but having them, the next day. They brought the next day. Our processes on reconnection, after speaking with David and Julie, it's just not logical for us to roll anybody out that day we still have to hold the customer responsible. And by giving them the avenues of utility assistance in the letter, a letter twice a year, and us stating, we can help you out 10 extra days once a quarter, we'll leave a lot of that on the responsibility of the resident and the customer. And then also the proposal of eliminating the current balance due for a bill they may have not yet received.
So you're suggesting like once a quarter, if I'm late on my bill, you're gonna give me 10 extra days. Okay.
If you call before the due date,
And
yes.
what happens the next month?
It's gonna be stated and in Marcus reviewed the ordinance, and if we need to add an appendix for that, we will, but it will be stated they get once a quarter. And Ms. Julie is working on something to where we can notate it on an account on the computer side.
I think it sounds like a good plan. I really like the idea of your letter, twice a year. It has a lot of good information in there. If possible in the future, maybe for consideration, that we could put, information, in the letter that there is the option for level pay or average pay so that they, don't get hit with, a large summer electric bill, which I think typically in the summertime is when most have the biggest problem with electric. But
Sure, their software will do.
I can confirm that, with Julie, and that's a great idea too. I know that's been mentioned. I'd like to bring that back maybe in 6 or 7 months to see how this works out. And then this kind of sets a precedent, well, okay, how are reconnections, how are disconnections? And then kind of go from there. And I can set a reminder to do that,
I just thought, I was under the impression we already had a level pay.
I thought we did too. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we do.
Okay.
Mine just comes out monthly, but I guess.
Yeah, yours comes out monthly, but say for example, your dad could get the last 12 months average pay and then really pay, $50 a month rather than 50, and 250. Yeah, yeah.
Because it goes by the previous 12 months consumption, so depending on when you set that level pay up. So then we would also still stress energy conservation, because this isn't a free fall for you that using as much electricity and getting the same bill every month. But we can add that in the communication piece as well, and I'll double check that with staff tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And to make sure we can put those notations on the account if this policy is passed.
Yeah, that sounds perfect. I do know that at the beginning of COVID, that when there were mandates that there could be no cutoffs of utilities, the staff worked. It worked very well for staff, and they got good feedback from the community where they offered an opportunity to do a payment plan through those very trying times at the beginning of the COVID. So
Yes,
I think
we
the more
can still do those on an as needed basis. So if there's a scenario.
awesome, that's great news.
Do we need to put it in our ordinance or the new policy?
At least be a policy that we probably establish.
So you should give him time to review this, see how it fits.
Sure.
And make
Get a staff review.
Okay.
What I would move to approve the recommended changes, section 7-406, reconnection charges as provided pending staff review.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
If it doesn't work, we can always change it back to where we need to be.
There we go. I think
At
that'll
least it'll help, hopefully help some people out.
Yes, that's the goal, I think, of this.
perfect, great. Megan,
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Harris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
aye. Item number 14, discuss and consider replacing the current KMEA board member with the city manager. Who is the current?
So right now, currently, we have, since we are a member city of KMEA, David is the main point of contact, as the main board of director. I would basically be replacing Mitchell on that board. It was recommended, when I met with KMEA, and when I spoke with David, to appoint me to that, so I could be part of the meetings and be a voting member. But he would actually be the main member representing the city. So this is just a formality, replacing Mitchell with myself.
I would move to, consider appointing or replacing the current KMEA board member with the city manager.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Harris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
Aye. Thank you. Discussion of Logan Point HOA. So we all received, communication from, former mayor, David Jones on his activity with, the HOA and terminating it or whatever. So, it was David's personal experience that he drove to Abilene and provided the county clerk with updated HOA or covenants out at Logan Point. I can tell you that, so he gave us a detailed explanation of everything that he had gone through in getting that taken care of. Well, so we've had issues at Logan Point, every sale of the lots since January that I've been involved in, that involve the covenants. We were told that we can waive the covenants at any, I went in search of the covenants. I checked with the city office, and I'm not criticizing anyone, checked the city office and checked with the, code enforcement officer, I checked with it, with our city attorney, ended up at, the county clerk's office. And Barb Jones, was very kind and helpful. So she went to she was excited that the Register of Deeds had the covenants. And she said that she asked specifically if there were any additions or changes filed over there, and she said no. So if there were any additions or changes, they don't have record of that. So again, this could very well be a situation where a document fell through the cracks, which is hard to believe because David said that he actually paid for this to be filed and had a receipt. So that's just another one of those situations that, we're gonna have to refile or relook at them and see if they're still relative to what we want today. Hold on.
So, I mean, you could change this to whatever. I don't know if you want to put something together, maybe or something.
We just gotta find all these missing documents.
When you go back through it, there was, it gets convoluted again because we had a land bank, now we don't. And the land bank became recipient of the remaining lots from the developer. Initially, it was the city and the commission, then it became the land bank board of trustees. But there's a piece in between there. We had to establish in order to even deal with the covenants, the homeowners association. Because they then became the source of how those would be amended. The only thing that occurred to me after we talked about this is to go back over there and see if I go to do anything, not through the land bank, search with registrar, but through the homeowners association. And see if somehow those things have been indexed in that way, was what David took over there. Because I have no doubt he's got fairly copious notes of what he did. I was involved with those land bank meetings till about August, July or August. Approved what they had done, rewrote what they asked me to rewrite. Then they had several meetings thereafter. And then the last I knew, they had taken that last draft, approved it, executed it, and then he was going to take those and file them on behalf of the land bank.
Okay, well, I'll be happy to go back over to,
I can call too. and so
Okay.
We can see,
if, yeah,
but that's just as an abundance of caution, to see if there's any other place. It's hard for me to understand how, as much of this as he's got written down, that
That it didn't
we can't
happen.
find a copy of it, because he even got reimbursed for it.
And somewhere there is a Logan Point Land Bank notebook.
Yes. We have the likelihood that we're ever going to find it is virtually nil. It never came back here.
I understand it. I understand that.
We asked for it. I have written requests asking for it in no uncertain terms, and that was refused.
Okay, well, between the two of us, one of us surely could get the information before the next meeting. My point with all of this is that when the lots are sold, the covenants are still attached.
Mhm.
And so the realtor has to go through those motions. And the other point being that if we're going to waive some of the covenants, some of the time for some of the people, that's not acceptable to me. So we need to get to the bottom of this because we are marketing these lots and there's a few that are selling. And so if we could just get done with it, would be awesome.
And we have issues with selective enforcement of restricted covenants.
Yes, selective enforcement or no enforcement, other than when they, it's on their deed that there are these covenant restrictions. But it's my understanding that even the first home that was built has not complied with the covenants that were in place at that time. So there's no point in having them if we're not going to enforce it or not be.
And with each sale, it becomes more difficult because you have to bear in mind that each property owner out there has a vested interest in standing and either enforcing or not enforcing those covenants, because their property, along with everyone around them in that addition, are what the covenants apply to, and they have a right to say, my neighbor is not following them and I want that enforced under the HOA. So it gets more and more messy.
I guess we'll proceed with gathering more information and find the legal documents that were filed. So, okay, thank you. I appreciate your help on that. Item number 16. Oh, did anyone else have any questions or comments on the HOA? Okay. Item 16, discuss and consider the city's cement policy.
Attached in your packets are some more quantifiable numbers on what would be deemed in regards to the regulations of how much cement would be allowed to be given to a property owner or a resident. And I got with my department head on the public works side and kind of got some of those cost totals down, and kind of wanted also to lay out how often somebody can apply for assistance on the cement, which is notated in your packet, which I think is once every 3 years. But then the most importantly is the measurements of the residents and the businesses. I think with the residents, it was 50 feet, with 15 feet from the ceiling joist down to the sidewalk, and then around, whereas the business would be 75 feet. So just some raw numbers in there to what can be done and how often it can be applied for. And then if this is approved, we will work on a formal application process so we can start documenting and keeping track in either Excel or some database folder on when somebody's applying, how often they're applying.
Did we set aside, or is it coming out of the general fund for the concrete? Is it a line item budget? Which I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
No, it's not.
So something we might want to do further than,
There's always replenish the 10,000 every year.
yeah, I know that, I think it's kind of general, I might be wrong, but
Well, I've been talking with Leo, he mentioned that, he's been doing longer than I have. He's never said we never once came close to using all that money allocated. It just gets added to. Yearly, depending on how much we deplete. There's some times where there's more than others, but now that we have a raw cost of materials, we can give a max as stated in the packet. What's the most that they can ask for based off the dimensions of their property or the dimensions of what we set for is max for the property and how much they can be allocated.
So I have a question on, the limitation of the program, number one. It addresses the sidewalk, the regular sidewalk, but then it, talks about from the sidewalk to the street.
Yes.
And we've had this issue with another resident about what portion is this, the sidewalk, which runs normal sidewalk. And are we saying that we would cover the cement between the regular sidewalk and the street now?
15 feet, because depending on how big the right of way is and how big the frontage is, that should cover everything 15 feet into the property as per the right of way, back out to the sidewalk. Most that's about 15 feet from that ceiling joist in the right of way or land marker.
So this is big curves.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, main sidewalk to the street.
Yeah.
So did we cover that previously? I don't recall that.
So I've used this program, it was several years ago when we did the sidewalk in front of our house. I don't think we included the short base from the sidewalk to the street, but we also weren't requesting that to be replaced either. I'm not opposed to including that short basis, most of the time not 15 feet, because the street's closer to the sidewalk than most people.
I think that's the maximum, it'd be the maximum allowed.
I think you're looking at maybe normal, the average around town is 3-4 feet.
6 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
If that's what I'm understanding, so you come to the main sidewalk and then another sidewalk, you go back to the street.
Yeah.
So it's like a T, you go each side.
Right.
To me, it's just all the same sidewalk, but
The only question I have is, do we have to send the notices out by certified mail, or can they be like the other things that eventually we'll want to talk about regarding code enforcement, going and knocking on the door, having a conversation? Because I noticed you said in here that the tools needed to be a door hanger, but if we're just sending notices out by certified mail, do we need a door hanger? And that's being picky and nitpicking it, but we're gonna make sure we're gonna do that. That's my other question. I'd rather save money for the city and have code enforcement or somebody go and knock on the door and say, hey, we'd like to talk about sidewalk.
Oh, I thought this was relating to a citizen request for sidewalk repair, not the city code enforcement.
Well,
What is stated in there is tools needed, and so the conversational piece, currently right now, that is the criteria for that. I know myself and staff have kind of used our gray area to have conversations with property owners in the absence of a permanent fire chief and a code enforcement officer. So I've been having those discussions with Leo, and I've also used Sheep Corner Day and some of these, some of a proactive educational piece. But stated that's how it's still technically supposed to be done. Now, as we look to expanding our footprint of code enforcement and educational piece, we can always take that out, and that would just be a simple policy revision.
I just noticed that in your first paragraph, it requires a notice to be given this report.
Yeah. No, yeah, that would be taken out once we, go through it, because obviously most of them are coming to us proactively. But talking with staff, that still needs to be stated, because that still technically is the procedure and how it's handled for most of the either reactive calls from a phone call or a complaint, more so than would be proactive.
isn't there a simple method that if I want to replace the sidewalk, I come to you, we have $10,000 in budget, I want 1,000 of it, then having all this.
Yeah, well, and if
As
we
long
go
as you
forward
build
with
the
this,
sidewalk to 4 foot by whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of simple.
The application that they're developing.
yeah, if this gets passed today by the commission, I've already mentioned Megan's offered assistance to work with department head on creating a template so we can have it readily available, put it on our website, and then say if Commissioner Bell needed to do something, here's an application. And then we'd go through make sure we have the money available and most likely be approved based on, the requirements that are met.
So the whole reason this came up is because somebody wants to use one to go around the tree.
Correct.
Is that, now are you going to go out there, observe it, and say, no, you have a working sidewalk? You need to groom your tree around your working sidewalk? Like, is there going to be some checks and balances here?
Yes, that's already been communicated. That issue was brought up to me. A fellow commissioner asked me about it, as did my department head, because that department head spoke with that customer, that resident, and I said it was more decorative. That in regards to there's no broken sidewalk, there's no broken curb. It would have been done for a decorative piece, and the city isn't in business to give somebody cement for a decorative piece. That unless it was broken or is not in ADA compliance or there's an issue there, then we would help out. But if they just wanted to add it for a decorative piece to go around, that's not anything that we would be in support of.
Okay.
And that's been communicated, and I haven't heard anything back from that.
Okay.
So I would move approval of the cement policy as presented. Any discussion? Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonnet?
Aye. Okay, item number 17, update on annexation.
We're just at the stage, it's been published, and so we just need a signature and we send it off to the county. So
Did we get the publication proof back already? Was the affidavit publication?
yeah, I'll have to check on
It said we need that, and once we have that, yes, then the signature will file it a record and it's done.
that. Okay.
We'll just, I'm sorry, that's gonna stay on my list until. I know,
Everybody
even
assumes
if we
already
walk it
have
over there, we're not guaranteed it's gonna be where it needs to be, but at least we'll have done our due diligence to get it there again, so, thank you, I appreciate your help on that. Update, item number 18, update on the KDOT loan payoff.
There was a formal request sent to KDOT from the city clerk in regards to asking for a payoff amount as of December 5th, correct? And so we should have that hopefully soon, and then we can, I know that we do have the funds for that, as stated when I first came on board. So that'll be something we'll be able to pay off, and then once we make that payment, we will bring it back to the commission for review after complete, just for confirmation.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Item number, did anyone else have questions or anything about that? Okay. Item 19, 2019 audit reports.
Ran away.
It's bad.
Yeah, I know you'd be used to that.
You say that we should-
See how this evening goes.
Does anybody have any questions on the audit?
Yeah, so this was furnished to us last week by our auditor, so we want to make sure that you had it. We've already gotten some requests in the community about when it's gonna be posted, if they're gonna have access to it. So before we can make any of this public information, we want to make sure that y'all all had it and reviewed it before we made it available online, et cetera.
It's public.
Yeah.
Well, it is, but you haven't seen it yet, so if anybody got questions about it, we want to make sure that we really saw it first before we published it.
Is there any intent for the auditor to come and do a presentation, or is this basically they handed it to you and said, good luck?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good one, but all right.
Yeah.
Then it'd be a motion to accept the audit, and then that puts it in, it's really, at this point, it's in the meeting minutes, so it's public anyway, but you still want to accept your audit annual.
Even without a review.
Well, if you're not prepared to accept it, then no, you don't want to do that yet,
But there's nothing you can change.
but, well, you can always change numbers. Yeah, that's fine, I suggest if you want to review it.
Okay, so
I'd like to make a motion to table it till next meeting.
I'll second it.
Megan?
Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Garris?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
No.
Mayor Ronick?
No. Okay, item number 20. Establish a town hall date for Harrington Municipal Hospital discussion. I believe it's been determined that we do not have the authority to request a town hall meeting with the subject of the municipal hospital. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. But there's also an opportunity for discussion is if we want to partner with a PBC, we can bring that to town hall. We just can't direct any kind of, we can't establish a town hall in regards to the hospital board. That's on their decision. But we can at least bring the community together to talk about PBC, pros, cons, etc. That's what the legality would be for that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
But I guess I'm thinking of it more along the lines, depends upon the topic. If you're simply wanting to discuss the efficacy and use of the hospital in the community, you can do that. You can't force the hospital board to come and attend if they choose not to. Again, it's that separation that there is to what I'm saying.
Well, but setting up a town hall and discussion of a planned hospital or anything like that, that would be out of our purview. We can talk about a hospital or we can talk about a PBC, but we couldn't talk specifically about the strategic plan or anything the hospital did.
No, not their internal plan,
Okay.
but even in terms of the city's position on, the efficacy of the hospital and different things there, sure. you can do that.
But there's no reason to set up a town hall meeting, the hospital should be the one, if they want a town hall meeting, it shouldn't be us. I mean, we don't
In
have
that regard,
information.
yeah, absolutely. In terms of the expansion, things that were mentioned, then it probably does make more sense for them to call that. But you have the ability, and you can go ahead and call one, discuss different issues that reflect on the city or in some way impacts them, but that project and process is theirs.
So we can't invite the hospital board.
Oh, you can
to have a
invite them.
Town hall meeting at the community building to discuss future hospital.
Planning, strategic planning,
Yeah.
as long as it's their strategic plan and they say, sure, we'll show up and talk about it. That's up to them.
But we can have a town hall meeting over a public building.
Which
Yes.
I think is the general consensus of where the commission should go. So we get support or we can educate or be educated on. I know we have a bond attorney that can maybe come by and talk about it, break up group, however we want to do it. But I think that's where we can kind of stay the course.
So if we would have put a public building commission together, they could go out and get all the information, do all the legwork, whatever, and bring it back to us.
They being,
Whoever you put on board,
The
right?
building commission.
Building commission.
we haven't created one yet.
No, but I'm just saying, if we would have, could have, or do, they could present the town hall meeting, they could do anything.
But we don't have the final decision
Right.
on anything that the public building commission does. We don't have final authority over what they decide.
Yes, we do.
So if there's a final, then why do they need us to co-sign? If we build
Because we created the public building commission.
so we'd have to sign off of it, whatever they decide.
If you wanted to create something that is a precursor to that, it's an advisory committee or board, still subject to open meetings, open records, who can come in and sit down. They can even attend if they so choose, and the hospital welcomes them. The trustees, the board of trustees meeting and discuss, okay, you guys are looking at these different alternatives and you require something in the way of a participatory set of acts from the city. And that may include things like, they discussed the other evening, the Public Building Commission, talk to us. And we will return a recommendation to the commission for the next final decision.
I'm not opposed to that. That
Just
would
extra
take-
steps.
That would take it a little bit out of our hands and let these smaller advisory group then make the recommendation whether or not what steps we should do.
Or we can also probably assign a city staffer to also be on
Yeah,
that advisory committee.
absolutely.
Like myself or Megan or whoever's assigned to kind of be the midway point for the staff.
I mean, you can meet with the CFO, and that, you can discuss all that, get everything ready, and then figure out a plan to present it to the community and us. You do have to label it for us.
Or somebody that you choose to.
So I think we're way ahead of a town hall meeting until we get you meet with the hospital and see which direction we want to go, or they all want to go. Before we present it.
As far as participation.
So what is your opinion on a town hall meeting, to present a building commission option? Vance?
I'm not that far. I'm not ready to start talking about new hospital, so I understand some questions about something of renovations of the old hospital. So I think we need a town hall meeting with the hospital in front of the public.
Okay, yes, to discussion in a town hall meeting on public building commission.
No. I
Yes.
would, no, I disagree. On what their goal, what our goal is. Are we going to renovate? Why are we not giving a renovation option? Why are we only giving a new hospital option and one new hospital option, not multiple? And then
So,
for what happens if we do nothing?
okay, so the question is, are you opposed to a town hall meeting to discuss and learn, be educated on a public building commission?
No, I'm not opposed to being.
You're not opposed to that? Okay,
to being involved.
okay. Eric?
No.
Curtis?
I don't think we got one yet. So I don't think we need one yet.
I'm not opposed to it, but I'm like, first, I need more information. What meetings will be like, what's the thing, what more information?
On the public building commission, so it's about a public building commission, not the hospital yet, not all the details of it, but define what a public building commission can and can't do, what are the restrictions, what are their, areas that they can, look into. We need more information on what a public building commission can do for us or do against us or for the community. I don't think we're educated enough on public building commission.
We got a little bit of that at the meeting, but you know, it's so wide open. Brad?
Yeah, there's another piece to it. We created a public building commission. If some of you will recall, when we acquired property from the hospital in terms of the apartments.
Yes.
Whether that can be reinvigorated or not, I have not read that thing for years to see if that's an option as well. If so, then it's smooth. You don't have to create one. You just have to decide if that one can be, because when they're created, they are to hold public buildings. I mean, buildings that are used by public entities like the hospital, like the city.
That was the hospital.
Yeah. So did you find the notebook on that previous public building committee? Were you able to locate it?
No.
No?
No.
I got
I
some.
can,
Okay.
I can get I've got a copy of it.
Okay.
JT Klaus, assisted with that whole process.
Right, we have a hard copy.
Okay.
I saw it not too long ago. Do you Debbie, it was in Megan's, it was in your office and that, okay, well, that's what we need to get that thing out again. And that way Brad could advise us if we already have one established, do we need to set new criteria? So at this point, it sounds like, no to establishing a town hall meeting date until we get further guidance or information. Any other discussion on that? All right, item 20A, hospital financials, discussion or action is needed relative to the financials and ownership of the hospital.
I think we got a lot of these answers earlier on a different topic. And I think until we have more of an idea of what participation the city is going to have, I think I'll withhold the motion I had planned on requesting from the commission.
All right,
No reason to reiterate what we've already discussed.
item 21, update on the Astra Lake reservation software.
So last week, meaning Marcus, did get the initial software installed on one computer. We are going to work on getting Megan and 2 other of our subordinates trained and then also discuss how we're gonna do it when we're on site over at the lake. But it seemed to be pretty smooth, right, Marcus, in terms of installing it and the fluidity of it so far? Yeah.
Awesome. I'm still working with them on getting the mapping correct. They've had to do some corrections based on the mapping.
Yeah, you can scroll in and pinpoint to the exact spot you want,
Yeah.
just click to see if it's available.
Right,
So,
right,
yeah.
yeah. They just don't have it laid out correctly, and it's a challenge, just doing it over email, so.
And when we do go live with the software, I did let some of the staff know that we do need to do a mass communication on this, just because there are a lot of people who may not be used to using online software, and there may be some citizens, rightly so, that I've had this spot for years, and I did this first come, first serve. So definitely have to make sure we have support in that mass communication piece for everybody involved.
Yep, and I believe that as we're working through the technical part that the office will be doing, there may be some additional questions that need to be answered. I know we still need to address the issue that Commissioner Donahue would like to have some of the spots as first come, first serve, but we've never finished that conversation. So it will come up before we go live in January 1st.
Okay.
So I just gave them a map of everything to get started on. Any other questions about software update? Okay, item 22, update on the city clerk transfer plan.
So after speaking with Ms. Megan and Marcus in regards to that, I feel that Megan should be ready to go to fully be on board as city clerk in the next week or two, after we finish the August and September finances, so we can provide it at the next commission meeting. I am going to work with the transfer of Marcus to the department of his choice. We do have a meeting set to that, and we do have some ideas to where we can kind of keep Marcus in a more expansive role than what he had planned to. So we're going to work on that hopefully this week after speaking with Public Works. But Megan's doing great. She's meeting a lot of people, and she did a little introductory to a public finance class last week, which she said went really well. So I think she's being set up for success. So and we'll can discuss that during our evaluation later on as well.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions in that regard? Okay, item 23, discussion of making a public safety director to fill the role of fire chief and police chief. I believe that was your recommendation.
Correct. So I'm currently looking for both positions, and maybe they're both at the same location. I've known in the past they have done this and it didn't go over well, but at the same time, maybe this is a chance to transition to something different. It might be able to save us some money on the administrative side. I did talk to Brandon. He said, and I think you explained that we still probably will have to keep 2 firefighters on full-time correctly.
We don't have to, but after speaking with ECM and I did confirm that Brad actually spoke to our carrier today too, that for not so much what impacts the city's insurance, but what impacts the residents' insurance, in regards to response times, rates for homeowners insurance could go up. So this wouldn't just be just a city staff issue. This could be something that kind of trickles down to the cost pocket, to the pockets of the landlords and property owners in the area. So that's something we have to take a look at. I can have ISO do an evaluation on the city on what we currently would have, and what we're projected to do. But we did get those answers back today, Brad and myself did.
So if you're like or a 4 on the insurance rating, Hope is to be a 9, so their homeowner's insurance would be higher at Hope than it would be there.
Yeah.
So anytime you change coverage, not saying it would, but it possibly could. There's a lot of things into it, water pressure, response time, people on staff, so.
We did have this conversation in December,
Yes.
and it was deferred.
Yeah.
Oh, you were here? Okay.
Now, why I'm not opposed to it. I'm open to everything. The only issue that I do have with it currently at this current state is I did post jobs for the chief of police, and it's going to end this week. And I feel that if we kind of go back in there and revise it, that could hurt some of the great applicants that we pulled in. So I'm proposing, if this is something that the commission is looking forward to or is on board with, I'd like to at least table it to after we hire a police chief for 6 months at that 6-month probationary period. Maybe that's something we can discuss with them if we feel comfortable with how they have been with, as the chief of police, and this is something that we can get them trained to do. We can discuss that too, with the hopes that the current interim fire chief, which I mentioned that, this may be a 6 to 7 month position, because ideally we want to talk about another position that I think we all have dear and near to our hearts of a code enforcement officer. I feel, police chief is the most important position to fill right now, but I feel while we have somebody who can kind of keep the interim fire chief at bay, we need to look towards maybe more expansive code enforcement. So I think all this kind of ties into it. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
I think it might save us money financially.
Yeah. And it would, and that's why I was saying maybe we hold off until that 6-month probationary period for the new police chief to see if it's something that they can be able to take on board, and then we can kind of know where we go with the fire chief position in regards to a fire chief. And that's gonna be something that I bring up in the interview process for the police chief. If there's something that the commission really feels we can move forward with, I can kind of mention that in the interview process of possibility.
The last public safety director was really strong on fire department,
Yeah,
but not so strong on lead.
yeah.
So you want to bring a public safety director, they have to get on both positions, and you're probably not going to get somebody cheap. for
Yeah.
that. Just saying.
Yeah.
I mean, so I'm looking at it 6 months, whatever you want to do, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
You got expert police officer and then fireman, it's 2 different things.
It would probably be hard to recruit outside the region, but I think if we bring on somebody who's a great candidate with being the chief of police, if they have that mobility to learn and take on that project, I think that'd be something we can discuss. Yeah, but I can scrap the whole chief of police position now and open up another one. When we do that, then it's gonna, I'd like to have that in chief of police, with Chief Hornaday for a few weeks.
I would not oppose that.
So that's why I want to make sure.
Process that we're doing now.
Okay.
And I understand the fact that, we could save the city some dollars, maybe not that many dollars, but we would be ultimately, the citizens would be paying more out of pocket for insurance.
I'll speak more candidly than the city manager, given my current
What are we gonna do, fire ya?
Amen. So here's the issue you need to look at prior to any decision being made by the city manager or the governing body. The first thing you should do is take a realistic, true look at the criminal element in the city and what is really needed to combat that, to protect and serve the citizens. You've already taken the first step, which I agree with. Matt Townsend and I had many discussions about making the police chief an exempt position, meaning taking away overtime. The issue you've had, if you look back at my time card for the past 2 years that I've been here, is the chief of police has to have his hands in everything. Reason being, chief of police is he is the lead investigator. Unfortunately, in the city of Harrington, you have a substantially high rate of felony crimes being committed, which requires that expertise. But by making that exempt position of chief of police, that's the right step, because the biggest issue you have to worry about is whether or not you're paying $40-something an hour for overtime, as opposed to paying a detective $15 or less an hour for overtime. You're still going to have that overtime, but it kind of forces the person in that chief position to step back or get divorced. You know, one or the other. Something like that's going to happen. But either way, it's not taking that money out. But I've worked both as a dual purpose law enforcement officer and firefighter at the same time. I can tell you one thing a cop doesn't want to do: fight fires. I'll drive really fast to the scene and I'll block traffic for you, but I don't want to get smoke and dirt in my uniform. There's apples and oranges. So when decisions are being made about saving the city money, there is a consequence for that. And if you're going to combine both of those, I hope you have a big fat checkbook, because you're going to pay a lot more. And as Mr. Dross mentioned there, I've seen all the applicants we've got. It's in a perfect opportunity with what's going on in the country right now to be able to attract and obtain a very highly qualified police chief. If you put anything, the color of red or anything to do with firefighter, attach it to that, you can forget about it. There is another city that they can go to that they will not have to perform those duties. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That was good. Short timer has a dual meeting there, doesn't it?
It took me 2 years, but I finally got it.
All right. Any other comments or concerns?
I'm not opposed to the idea, I'm just not ready to even consider it. So when you're ready to bring it to us, I'm happy to have it.
I think that's what they've done, two sets of positions, two sets of people. That's just my opinion. That's what I'd say.
We can always, like I said, bring it back up. And
Yeah,
we'll
always bring it
discuss
back.
it.
My major, so when it was proposed to us in January, my major thing that I did disagree with is the still keeping the fire chief and a police chief and a public safety director. I think it's merged into one, if that's the way we're going to go. And that's only route I feel.
Okay. All right.
But that's me.
All right.
There's an adage to that. I think I've got 30 seconds left with that. I talked in great detail with Matt Townsend when he was still here during that transition period. One of the issues with that is that I disagreed with it back then also, because all we were doing was creating a position, a job title, and going to pay a person more money. It would have been me, but the only thing I would be there for is day-to-day supervision of someone else in a position who should already be able to operate at a high level of expertise. That was the sole reason for it. And I don't think you have that problem to deal with, and I don't think you should create that problem to deal with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was 30 seconds.
Yeah, did.
Good.
I counted 31.
All right. Item number 24, executive session. I move the city commission recess into executive session pursuant to the personnel matters of non-elected personnel exception KSA 754319 B1 in order to discuss personnel changes. The open meeting will resume at, how long do we need?
15 minutes?
That's 20.
Yeah, we'll say 20. All right.
Hey, last time you were begging me for the last 3 minutes, so I'm just.
All right. 7:23? Okay. The open meeting will resume at 7:23 p.m. to include the governing body, city attorney, city manager, and city clerks.
I'll second it.
Megan?
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Donahue?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Bell?
Aye.
Mayor Bonin?
Aye.
She gets my name correct.
If she didn't, she should. Oops, my blood pressure medication.
It's 7:23. The regular meeting will resume with no action taken.
Yep, I'm gonna go ahead and find it.
All right, so we're ready for our city manager
27, 8.
comments.
Kids,
You're past your time. All right, Brandon.
Just wanted to update the community on the chief of police, recruitment. We've had some great, like Chief said earlier, and I mentioned, quite a few times over the past week. We got some great candidates from all over the country, from as far as New York to Oregon, Washington. So I feel pretty good about our candidate pool. The candidate application period closes Friday. I've already reached out to a few of the candidates to send them a questionnaire. And, I have that due by the end of business day tomorrow. I also will hopefully be able to work out, a community input session on that, with the finalists when that time comes. So thank you everybody for your support. I think everybody's gonna be pretty happy with the candidates we have out there.
Yes.
So, in the spring of 2019, I reached out to all Harrington Municipal Hospital board members to meet after having an executive session with the CFO and the president of the hospital board. Most of them called me back, and most agreed to also do so. Just to kind of get a feel of where the hospital was going to go. This summer, we had two commissioners invited with the idea that they would inform us where the hospital was going with the direction. I never got asked where my point of view was. So as of Wednesday last week, I did not feel informed last week and did not feel my opinion was given to the hospital board or even asked. So now I'll give my opinion. One of the opinions I wanted to see was a phase-in renovation and what that would cost. Another one may have been a completed new building and maybe a downsized new building, not something twice the size of our current hospital. Another option is we could possibly look into selling the hospital to the Harrington Hospital Foundation, since they're already buying property over in Hillsborough. Or we could do nothing. But I did not feel last week we were way ahead of where we needed. And I just feel like we need to step back and kind of think things through before we decide to tax our community on the property side of it, a $28 million building. Other than that, I have nothing more.
Thank you. Eric?
Just a reminder to the governing body that we've got a little bit of about a month before we start talking about the vacant building ordinance that we want to review. So just want to remind you guys to take another review of that. Like a whole month worth. So.
Curtis?
I really don't have much of anything at all. Other than I do work at Catlett Automotive now, which is used to be GR at Napa, Auto Parts, so want to come down here and see my smiley face again.
How much did you get? How much did you get?
I put in so many hours of overtime. I lose some money down there.
on the mini mall, are we done with that?
We should be, right? We had the discussion on, no, not yet? Okay. Oh, you're waiting for the identification? Oh. Oh, okay, yeah, that's right. Almost.
So, I mean, are we done paying? It's not ours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it was sold.
So whatever, after we're done with tearing the building down.
Yes.
We should be done paying. We paid the
In other
contract.
words, we're not writing any more checks, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Best of my knowledge.
What I'm saying is because I've seen more dirt pulled in and stuff. And they
Oh,
changed,
that's right, yeah.
they changed the slope, but, so are we safe, reliable, are we done?
Leo is actually reaching out. We got billed for the last drop. So Leo's gonna reach out because we thought that was,
No, well, that, the newest dirt was part of that whole harmless agreement that we had signed. That was 30 cubic yards, that last one, and that's the end of the dirt.
I think they were working on that on Sunday.
Well, I don't know, but
But that agreement
it
is
shouldn't be
signed.
tied to us anymore. Although I know, I think there's some damage on the sidewalk, which we'll probably fix. But where the trucks went back and forth, but other than that, we should be done paying.
Correct.
Okay, I just checking. I had something else worked out, so.
But the dirt that was dropped, there was in the original contract. Right.
No,
It was in the whole harmless contract.
they requested some additional, they wanted to create some elevation as I understood it. What we used through Blixt, we were done, that was it. And then just as an accommodation, as I understand, the city said, well, it'll bring you 4 loads, which 4 loads I needed to know. We did find out what the load was in terms of cubic yards. Did announced a whole harmless indemnification that they signed, dumped the dirt, and there it's their business. So in terms of have we stopped the bleeding in that regard, other than the repair of the sidewalk, yes. Okay.
But if they have any water, if they have any water damage, any issues, anything, it is not on us, and that's why we had them sign the hold harmless.
That, well, no, that was at the time when you buy it, sheriff's sale, it's as is where it is.
Yeah,
What you see or didn't see is what you get.
exactly.
And is it signed?
Well, that's announced, and when they buy the sheriff's sale, that's it.
But we have them sign a separate agreement.
And that was for, when we put the dirt out there, did not want to have any other question about like what we did out of the quality of the material provided or anything. So all of that was noted in that whole harmless. Okay.
Alrighty, well, I just need to share or thank you again, Brandon. I've heard numerous compliments from business owners and citizens about how you've proactively put yourself out there to meet everyone and take time to visit with them, and it's being noticed, and I appreciate that you're moving ahead with that quickly, so thank you.
Add to that, Bill.
Can you answer it?
Add to it.
Yeah.
They said that it's like some of the business owners, the first time city managers went out and actually talked to them.
Ever.
So that's a good thing, and I hope you keep it up, and thank you.
thank you.
All right, was there anything else for the good of the community?
Move to adjourn, second.
Hopefully the kitchen is still open, right?
No,
It's not.
no.
Is it Carl's cooking?
Sorry, Commissioner Donahue,
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Commissioner Garrett,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman,
Aye.
Commissioner Bell,
Aye.
Mayor Rob.
No?
Good one, David. Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh, not so much the other guy.